When visitors see this swift boat and are told of its uses and the conditions under which many of you lived, they too will be awed by your accomplishments.
Those of us who have been fortunate enough to survive and are here today need to be aware that the time has come to bind up the wounds. With regard to our enemy, we have established prosthetic facilities in Vietnam, one near Saigon and one in the Delta. Using U.S. government money, we have begun the provision of arms and legs, initially to those who fought on our side, and then later to those who fought on the other side and were not being provided for by their government. And when I visited Vietnam last September, I had the thrill of placing the 12,000th limb on one of the Vietnam veterans. We're working now to get the monies to facilitate the explosion of the mines, or the retrieval of the millions of mines that were sowed, which continue to deprive young Vietnamese of their limbs. I have personally devoted a great deal of time to the battle to win recognition for our Vietnam veterans of the compensation they deserve if they suffer from the health effects of Agent Orange. In the early 80s, it was the written policy of our government to see to it that the correlation was not established. To his great credit, President Bush, when that was made apparent to him, authorized the first 3 diseases to be made compensable, and under President Clinton, another 7 have been added to that list. There are, in my judgment, another 18, and if I live, we will get them made compensable. But this event today is another step in the direction of binding up the wounds and putting that war behind us. The symbol that will exist with the placement of this swift boat will be to symbolize the courage, the initiative, the imagination, the sheer guts of the remarkable crews that sailed and steamed in that craft. I am not, like Secretary McNamara, of the view that that war was a wasted war. In the near term, I can report to you that it was General Abrams' view that the contribution made by Sea Lords sealed off the Delta and made possible by 1970 the pacification of that Delta. Your ability to train your successors, the Vietnamese, made it possible for every naval fighting man to be out of that war in 1970, 5 years before the end. And when Saigon finally fell in 1975, the Delta had been so turned to support of the free world that it was 4 to 6 months before the communists were able to gain access to that area again. Nevertheless, some would say that we won that battle and lost the war. I reject that. We had, it is true, thousands more casualties than we needed to have had the war been fought the way the military wanted to fight it. But in my trip back to Vietnam, I found an absolute phenomenon last September. I met with a former enemy general, the president of the country, Lee Duc-an, with General Giap, their commander-in-chief, with General Tran Van Tra, who commanded the Viet Cong forces in the south. When I met with him in Saigon, I said, "General, I'm surprised at how easy it was to find you today. 20 years ago, I spent 2 years looking for you and never found you." He laughed and said, "Perhaps it's just as well, or one of us wouldn't be here for this good meeting today." But I found among them and among the people responsible for health and their doctors on the Agent Orange Committee totally willing to work with us. And I found another phenomenon, and that is that although they continue to feel contempt for the Japanese, who were their colonial occupiers, and for the French who did the same before and after the Japanese, They have a great deal of respect for Americans. And finally, and most importantly for you, I think, is the fact that it is clear that they recognize that by their so-called victory, they lost 20 years of opportunity to work with the United States in establishing a free enterprise system. They recognize that their central economy was a catastrophic failure. The contribution that you brave men and those who did not come back have made is that in the long term, the Vietnamese developed a tremendous respect for our fighting ability, for our willingness to love and cherish the Vietnamese that we came to know, and for our way of life. And to me, as every time that I look in the museum at that swift boat, those are the thoughts that will run through my mind as I salute you for your tremendous contribution. It gives me great pleasure at this time to introduce a courageous Vietnam veteran upon whose chest I had the pleasure of pinning the Silver Star Medal when he was a lieutenant in Vietnam. I received a report that a swift boat captain had beached his craft and with his crew had gone ashore and killed the Viet Cong who were shooting at them. I grabbed a Silver Star and flew down by helicopter, and I said to that young man, why in the world did you do that thing? And he said, I simply got tired of being fired at and wanted to see who it was that I was shooting back at. And it was a very courageous act. He is the junior senator from Massachusetts, but the senior member of the Swift Boat reunion, Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts.
Admiral Zumwalt, Admiral Border, Admiral Hoffman, Admiral Will, Admiral Moore, Congressman Colby, and my fellow comrades in arms and brother Swifties. We've come here today with respect and with love to complete the last river run. We brought our memories and those dearest to us in order to put in a place of honored history a remarkable vessel of the United States Navy. In so doing, we proudly share with the nation that we willingly served hundreds, even thousands of examples of daring, courage, commitment, and sacrifice. We do that with none of the braggadocio or even brash arrogance of our younger days. We do so with the humility that comes from the intervening years and the fact that we survived while buddies did not. But we do so with unabashed pride in the quality of our service and those we were privileged to fight with, boat for boat and man for man. We do so knowing that no words here today, no hushed conversation with a wife or a son or daughter, no 30-year-later memory or description will ever convey the sight and the feeling of 6 or 10 or 12 Swifts, engines throbbing, radios crackling, guns thundering towards the riverbank, moving ever closer into harm's way. But that's not all that it was. We sunbathed, and we skinny dipped. We traded sea rations for fresh shrimp, and we left our Vietnamese recipients of Uncle Sam's technology grinning from ear to ear as they believed that they got the better of the deal. We happily basked in wide nut smiles. We glorified shouts, "Hey, American, you number 1." And we casually brushed off taunts of, "Hey, you number 10." We replaced psychological operation tapes with James Brown and Jimmy Morrison. We used our riot guns to shoot duck and cook up a feast. And yes, some did water ski. We harassed LSTs and destroyers, lauding it over our less lucky, less plucky, black-shoed Navy brothers. We parlayed our independence and proximity to the war into handouts of steak, fruit, shipboard meals, and best of all, ice cream. We became the consummate artists of Cumshaw. We believed that anyone, enlisted or officer, might one day be CNO or SINCPAC, and all the while, nothing really much mattered except trying to win a war and keep each other alive. When we broke the rules, which we never did, of course, Admiral, we would say, "What the hell can they do? Send us to Vietnam?" And through it all, we never forgot how to laugh. And there were wonderful moments, not just the gallows humor of the war, but those that came from the special spirit of Swifties. The times we lobbed raw eggs from boat to boat, the great flare fights that we had, ultimately lighting Bill Rood's life raft on fire, delivering lumber to Namcan in the middle of the war, the ridiculous PSYOPs packages which nobody understood, which we handed out, and of course, pet dogs that didn't understand English or Vietnamese for "don't do it there." There were as many moments of humor as swift boats and sailors. And we exulted in the beauty of a country that took us from glorious green rice paddy, black water buffalo caressing the banks of rivers, children giggling and playing on dikes, sampans filled with produce going to market, that suddenly took us from innocence and tranquility deep into the madness of firefights, chaos reigning around us, 50 calibers diminishing our hearing, screams for medevac piercing the radio waves, fishtailing rockets passing the pilot house, all suddenly to be replaced by the most serene, eerie beauty the eye could behold and an awesome sense of survival. We lived in the daily contradiction of living and dying. In a great lesson for the rest of this country in these difficult times, we never looked on each other as officer or enlisted, as Okie or Downeasterner. We were just plain brothers in combat, proud Americans, together with our proud vessels who answered the call. We were bound together in the great and noble effort of giving ourselves to something bigger than each and every one of us individually, and doing so at risk of life and limb. Let no one ever doubt the quality and the nobility of that commitment. The specs say that these great boats behind me here have a 1/4-inch aluminum hull. But to us, it was a hull of steel, though at times that was not enough. It was hospital, restaurant, and home. It was sometimes birthplace and sometimes deathbed. It was where we lived and where we grew up. It was where we confronted and conquered fear and where we found courage. It was our confessional and our place of silent prayer. We worked these boats hard. No matter the mission, no matter the odds, we pushed them, and they took us through violent cross-currents of surf, through 30-foot monsoon seas, through fish steaks and mangrove, through sandbars and mud flats. We loved these boats, even if we abused them of necessity. And the truth is, they loved us back. They never let us down. We made mistakes, and sometimes we bit off more than we could chew. We didn't just push the limits, we exceeded them routinely, and still the boats came through. They were our partners on a grand and unpredictable adventure. Mines exploded underneath us, and for the most part, the boats pressed on. The Marines made amphibious landings and took the beachheads. So did we. The Army conducted sweeps and overran ambushes. So did we. The regular Navy provided shore bombardment and forward fire control. So did we. The Coast Guard intercepted weapons and gave emergency medical care. So did we. The nurses and Red Cross saved lives and delivered babies. So did we. The SEALs set ambushes and gathered intelligence. So did we. The only thing our boats couldn't do by definition was fly. But some would say that light of ammo and fuel and exuberant to have survived a firefight or a monsoon sea, we flew too. But the power and the strength was not just in the boats. It was in the courage and the camaraderie of those who manned them. In the darkness and solitude of night, or parked in a cove before a mission, or in the beauty of a crimson dawn before entering the Baihop or the Mito or the Bodie or any other mangrove-cluttered river, we shared our fears. And no matter what our differences, we were bound together on an extraordinary journey, the memory of which will last forever. On just routine patrol, these boats were our sanctuary, our cloister, a place for crossing divides between Montana, Michigan, Arkansas, Massachusetts. The boats occupied us and protected us. They were the place we came together in fellowship, brotherhood, and ultimately love, to share our enthusiasm, our idealism, our youth. Now we are joined together again after more than a quarter century to celebrate this special moment in our lives. And it is a bittersweet moment, a time to reflect on those events and those friendships that changed our lives and made us who we are today. Some were not as lucky as we were. They did not have the chance to grow up as we did. They never got to see their children. They did not have the chance to fulfill their dreams, and we honor their memory today. In their presence, we are gathered with so much more than just mutual respect and admiration, and so much more than just nostalgia. We loved each other and we loved these boats, but because of the nature of the war we fought, we came back to a country that could not recognize that contribution. It did not understand the war we fought, and it did not understand what we went through or the love that held us together then. It did not understand what young men could feel for boats like these and men like you. This is really the first time in 30 years that we've been able to share with each other the feelings that we had then and the feelings that we have now. They are deeply and profoundly personal feelings. So today, we are here, still with ready hand, and more than ever, undaunted hearts, to complete the last river run and escort these magnificent boats into history. We who served aboard them now are bound together, not just as veterans, not just as friends, but as family. And to all who served on these boats, to all who supported us in that effort, I salute you, and may God bless you and your families.
Certificate of Delivery. Pursuant to the provisions of Commander Naval Sea Systems Command Letter 4780, The undersigned, as an authorized representative of the Naval Historical Center, accepts the below described ship, together with its onboard equipment, from Ernest E. Christensen, Rear Admiral, United States Navy, Commander Training Command, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, authorized representative of the United States Navy. Signed for by Dr. William Dudley, Naval Historical Center. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we request a moment of silence for our fallen comrades.
This poem is dedicated to 4 very special men, and to all of you, and to all of those who couldn't make it. Do you remember? Freedom fighters, where have they gone? Do you know? Do you care? Is anyone out there? Have they all been forgotten? Do you know what they've done? Does anyone know? Does anyone care? Is anyone out there? Has all hope been lost? What is the cost? Does anyone know? Does anyone care? Do you understand what you have gained? Do you know how many have been slain? Does anyone know? Does anyone care? Is anyone out there? Who are the freedom fighters who have been forgotten? What hope? Who has been slain? What kinds of answers are these? Please, is anyone out there? Do you remember? Do you care?
Would you please rise? For those who have served, and for those who have fallen, we know, we remember, and we care. Bosun Mate Second Class Herbert Tuck, Jr., Quartermaster Third Class Eugene Self, Quartermaster Second Class Richard Whistler, Raterman Martin Dougherty, Raterman Gerald Pochel, Bosun Mate Peter Blasco, Jr., Gunner's Mate Billy S. Armstrong, EN2 Edward C. Cruz, Bosun Mate First Class Kemper Billings, Lieutenant J.G. Richard C. Wallace, Bosun Mate Third Class Harry Brock, Raterman Bruce Timmons, Engineman Albert Franson, Gunner's Mate Glenn Keene, Lieutenant J.G. Robert Barber, Gunner's Mate Alvin Levon, Gunner's Mate Richard Stindle, Raterman Frederick Snyder, Raterman Craig Hines, Quartermaster Second Class Lanny Baroff, Gunner's Mate Stephen Penta, Lieutenant J.G. Robert L. Crosby. Last night I had the strangest dream I never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. And I dreamed I saw a mighty room, and the room was filled with men. And the paper they were signing said, we'd never fight again. And when the paper was all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and prayerful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, and guns and drums and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war.
Advance the colors.